The spiderweb crack in the glass bloomed like frost. Then, impact. The window exploded inward. Zuri hit the floor hard, her palms scraping against polished wood as shards rained down around her. The sharp scent of gunpowder cut through the air. Silencer. Not loud. Not chaotic. Professional. The red security light pulsed down the hallway like a heartbeat. Fit. Another round struck the far bookshelf. Zuri. Dae-hyun's voice thundered through the wing. The heavy thud of his boots was closer now, fast, precise, controlled. Not panic. War. She pressed herself against the floor, breath coming in ragged pulls. For weeks she had imagined freedom coming like this. A door blown open. Chains shattered. The monster slain. So why? Why was she praying it wasn't him who fell? The library doors burst open. Dae-hyun entered with a handgun already drawn, movements sharp and lethal. Gone was the careful husband. Gone was the conflicted man. This was Chairman Kang. This was the glacier cracking loose from the mountain. He dropped to one knee beside her, one hand gripping her shoulder, scanning the perimeter with terrifying focus. "Are you hit?" he demanded. She shook her head. His palm slid quickly down her side, checking for blood, efficient but not invasive. Glass crunched outside in the snow. 3 shadows moved beyond the shattered window. Not 1. 3. "You said no guards in the wing," she whispered. "They are outside the perimeter," he replied. Someone disabled the outer sensors. His jaw hardened. Inside job. Another shot pierced the wall inches above them. Dae-hyun reacted instantly, rolling and firing twice in controlled succession. 1 shadow dropped. The other 2 scattered behind the tree line. "You need to move," he said sharply, grabbing her hand. He didn't drag her. He pulled her with him, fast but careful, keeping his body between hers and the broken window. As they moved into the hallway, another alarm began to wail deeper in the estate. They weren't just targeting her. They were breaching the compound. "You wanted to be free," he muttered darkly. "This is what freedom looks like without protection." She should have argued. Instead, she tightened her grip on his sleeve. He felt it. His eyes flicked to her for half a second, enough to register that she was choosing him. Gunfire erupted from the lower courtyard. The guards had engaged. Dae-hyun shoved open a concealed panel in the wall, revealing a reinforced safe corridor. "Inside," he ordered. She hesitated. "What about you?" The question hung between them. He almost smiled, not amused, but something softer. "I am not the one they're hunting," he said. "Yes, you are," she shot back. "They just know I'm the easier way to hurt you." That landed. Another explosion rattled the windows. Dae-hyun stepped into the corridor with her, sealing the panel behind them. The narrow space was dim, lined with steel. The estate in Gangwon province had always been a fortress. Now it felt like a bunker. He pulled out his phone, issuing rapid-fire commands. "Lock the inner gates. Route backup from the city. No prisoners." His voice was ice again, but his free hand never left her waist. A distant scream echoed from outside. One of the attackers. Zuri's stomach twisted. "Is it him?" she asked quietly. Dae-hyun's eyes sharpened. "The man from the calls?" She nodded. He studied her face for something. Fear, longing, regret. Found only tension. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But if he brought armed men to this estate, he is not here to save you." Another blast shook the corridor. Closer this time. Dust sifted down from the ceiling. Her breathing quickened. Dae-hyun noticed immediately. He stepped closer, one arm wrapping around her shoulders. Not possessive. Protective. "You're shaking," he said. "I'm pregnant," she snapped. "I'm allowed." His hand moved instinctively to her stomach, shielding. The gesture was raw, uncalculated. Outside, the gunfire intensified. Then, silence. Heavy. Waiting. His phone buzzed. Juno's voice came through, tight but steady. Perimeter secure. 2 confirmed down. 1 attempting to flee into the lower woods. Dae-hyun's eyes darkened. "Alive?" he asked. "Yes, sir." A long pause. Zuri held her breath. "Bring him in," Dae-hyun said finally. "Not kill. Bring." He ended the call. The silence inside the corridor was different now. Aftermath. "You could have ordered them to execute him," she said. "I could have," he replied. Why didn't you? His gaze dropped to her. Because you were praying I reached you first. Her breath caught. He had seen it. In the library. In her eyes. I didn't want you to die, she whispered. And I didn't want you to be free like that, he answered quietly. The admission was heavy. Honest. Footsteps approached the corridor entrance. Juno's voice, sir, it's contained. Dae-hyun looked at her for a long moment. You said you didn't want a cage, he murmured. I don't. This, he gestured vaguely toward the sealed steel walls, is the world outside my control. She swallowed. And yet you ran toward it to reach me. He didn't deny it. He reached up and brushed a shard of glass from her hair. Gentle, unthinking. If I die, he said calmly, you do not become free. You become vulnerable. And if you live like this, she replied, you are already alone. The words hit, not as accusation, as truth. A knock at the panel. Sir, the survivor is requesting to speak before interrogation. Dae-hyun's jaw tightened. To you, Juno added. Silence thickened. Zuri's heart pounded again. Is it him? She whispered. Dae-hyun didn't answer. He pressed his forehead briefly against hers. Not romantic, not dominating. Grounding. Stay here, he said. She caught his sleeve. Don't kill him. His eyes searched hers. For you, he asked. For us, she corrected. That word hung between them like a fragile bridge. He nodded once, then stepped out of the corridor. The steel door sealed behind him with a hiss. Zuri stood alone in the narrow space, heart hammering, listening to the distant echo of footsteps moving toward reckoning. She had wanted the monster slain. Instead, she had watched him shield her with his body. And somewhere deep inside, beneath anger and pride and months of resentment, she knew, if the monsters outside killed the monster inside, it would not feel like freedom. It would feel like loss. The gunfire came again. Not loud, not cinematic, just soft, controlled bursts meant to kill without spectacle. Zuri pressed herself against the polished wood floor, shards of glass raining over her back. Her pulse roared in her ears. Another shot cracked into the opposite wall. They weren't warning shots. They were precise, professional. The library doors slammed open. Dae-hyun. He didn't look human now. The softness from earlier, the almost smirk, was gone. What replaced it was something older, colder, calculating. His eyes found her instantly. Stay down. Another round tore through the bookshelf above them. Paper exploded into the air like dying birds. Dae-hyun crossed the room in 3 strides and dropped beside her, pulling her hard against his chest as another bullet embedded in the marble fireplace. His body became a shield. Not metaphorically. Literally. You brought them, he said quietly, not accusing, just assessing. I didn't know he'd. Her words cut off as the hallway lights flickered. The red alarm intensified. Multiple breaches. Dae-hyun's jaw tightened. They're not here to rescue you. A deafening crash echoed from the west wing. They're here to kill me, he finished. Zuri's stomach dropped, and if they killed him, what would they do with her? A second set of footsteps pounded through the hall outside the library. Not Dae-hyun's men. He heard it too. His gaze shifted, sharp, lethal. He pulled a handgun from the back of his waistband and pressed it into her shaking hands. The weight shocked her. I don't know how to. You do, he cut in calmly. Point. Breathe. Squeeze. Not pull. The door handle rattled. Someone was trying to force it. Dae-hyun leaned close, his mouth near her ear. His voice dropped to something that vibrated straight through her. If I fall, don't wait to see who wins. The door exploded inward. Gunfire erupted. Dae-hyun moved first. Not reckless. Efficient. 2 shots. 2 bodies. He didn't hesitate. But more shadows flooded the hallway. They were coordinated. Tactical. And they were pushing deeper into the house. This wasn't an extraction. This was a siege. A bullet grazed Dae-hyun's shoulder. He barely flinched, returning fire with ruthless precision. Zuri saw him differently in that moment. Not the man who locked her in a gilded cage. Not the monster who said he wanted her to choose it. But a warlord defending his territory with terrifying competence. And she understood something that twisted her heart. If he died, she wouldn't just lose her captor. She would lose the only person in this house who saw her as more than leverage. A flashbang detonated in the hallway. The blast rang through her skull. Smoke poured into the room. Through the haze, a figure appeared in the doorway. Familiar stance. Familiar voice. Zuri. Her breath caught. Him. Her brother's best friend. The one who promised he'd find her. He stepped over the bodies without hesitation. Come on. Now. Dae-hyun grabbed her wrist at the same moment. Not violently. Firmly. Grounding. The two men locked eyes across the smoke. War in a single look. He'll never let you go, the rescuer said. Dae-hyun's grip tightened slightly. And you think you're taking her somewhere safe? Another gunshot rang from behind the rescuer. Chaos was spreading through the house. Time was collapsing. Zuri's heart pounded. So hard she thought she might black out. This was it. Freedom. Or the devil she understood. Her rescuer extended his hand. Zuri. Dae-hyun didn't beg. He didn't plead. He simply looked at her. And for the first time since she'd met him, there was no dominance in his eyes. Only something dangerously close to trust. Choose, he said. Another explosion shook the ceiling. Dust rained down. If she went with her rescuer, the war outside would swallow her whole. If she stayed, she wasn't sure whether she was choosing a cage, or choosing the man willing to burn the world before letting anyone else own her fate. Her fingers trembled, and she moved, but not the way either of them expected. She tore her wrist from Dae-hyun's grasp, and shoved the gun into her rescuer's chest. Stop shooting, she screamed. All of you. For one stunned second, everything froze. Even Dae-hyun. Her voice cracked but didn't break. You want him, she shouted at the shadows in the hallway. You'll have to come through me. The silence that followed was heavier than the gunfire, because suddenly, Zuri wasn't prey. She was the line, and both monsters had to decide whether they were willing to cross it. For a split second, the world obeyed her. Smoke curled in slow, ghost-like ribbons. The men in the hallway hesitated. Even the security alarm seemed to dull beneath the force of her voice. Zuri stood between them, between war and war. Her rescuer stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Zuri moved. No, the gun in her hand shook, but she kept it steady against his chest. Call them off. Behind her, she felt Dae-hyun rise. Not rushing her, not dragging her back. Just standing, bleeding. A dark stain spread across his shirt from the graze on his shoulder, but he didn't seem to notice. His attention was fixed entirely on her. You said you were coming for me, she said to the man in front of her. You didn't say you'd bring an army. They took you, he snapped. He took you. Yes, she breathed. He did. Silence. A shard of glass crunched under someone's boot in the hallway. Her rescuer's jaw flexed. He's been expanding into our territory for months. We had confirmation you were here. This was our only chance. Zuri's voice sharpened. Since when am I part of your war? The words landed. Hard. Because that was the truth no one wanted to say. She wasn't being rescued. She was being reclaimed. Behind her, Dae-hyun spoke at last. Calm. Measured. Deadly. They won't stop, he told her quietly. Even if he calls them off, others will keep coming. I've made too many enemies. And whose fault is that? She shot back without turning. A faint huff of breath, almost a laugh, left him. Mine. Gunfire erupted again from deeper in the house. One of Dae-hyun's external guards must have reached the perimeter. The spell shattered. Her rescuer grabbed her wrist. Enough. We're leaving. In the same instant, Dae-hyun stepped forward. Everything happened at once. Another shot cracked through the library. Zuri gasped as her rescuer jerked, a red bloom spreading across his side. He staggered. Not dead, but hit. Dae-hyun hadn't fired. The shot came from the hallway. Friendly fire. The kind that happens when wars are messy. Zuri caught him before he fell. His weight nearly dragged her down. Call them off, she whispered fiercely. Now, through clenched teeth, he reached for his comm device and barked in order. Gradually, the gunfire thinned, then stopped. Smoke lingered. Bodies didn't move. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Someone outside the compound must have alerted authorities. Time was over. Reinforcements, official ones, would arrive soon. Dae-hyun stepped closer, watching her kneel beside the man who came to save her. He didn't touch her, didn't try to pull her away. That restraint said more than anything else tonight. Why? Her rescuer rasped weakly. looking up at her. He's your captor. Her throat tightened. Yes, she said honestly. Then she glanced back at Dae-hyun. He met her gaze steadily. But he didn't bring the war to my door, she finished softly. The truth was uglier than loyalty. She wasn't choosing a cage. She was choosing control. And right now, Dae-hyun was the only one not pretending she was a trophy. Outside, flashing blue and red lights began to reflect against the shattered windows. Law enforcement. Media would follow. This wouldn't stay hidden. Dae-hyun exhaled slowly. This changes things. For you, she asked. For us. Us. The word hung there, fragile and dangerous. She helped her wounded rescuer to his feet. You need to go. Now. Before the police find you here. His eyes searched hers. Are you staying? He asked, disbelief threading through the pain. Zuri looked around the ruined library. The shattered glass. The bullet holes. The blood. The broken illusion of a gilded cage. Then she looked at Dae-hyun. He stood tall despite the injury. Not smiling. Not smirking. Waiting. I'm not staying, she said slowly. Both men stiffened. I'm not leaving either. Confusion flickered across her rescuer's face. She turned to Dae-hyun fully. If I'm here, it won't be because you locked the doors. The alarm lights finally cut off, plunging the hallway into dim emergency lighting. If I stay, she continued, voice steady now, it's because I choose to. Something shifted in Dae-hyun's expression. Not triumph. Not possession. Something almost reverent. Outside, sirens grew louder. Decision time. Her rescuer squeezed her hand. Once. Painfully. This isn't over. No, she agreed. It wasn't. He slipped out through the side corridor with the remaining men, just as the first police vehicles breached the outer gates. Silence fell heavy in the library. Just her. And Dae-hyun. And the wreckage of what they'd both built around her. He took one careful step toward her. Do you want to stay? He asked quietly. The same question, but different now. Zuri looked at him, really looked at him. The blood on his sleeve, the restraint in his posture, the war he had built, the war that had followed her here. I want, she said slowly, to not be anyone's prize. Not yours, not theirs. His jaw tightened. That's not an answer. She stepped closer, close enough to see the flicker of uncertainty beneath his composure. I don't want the cage, she whispered. Her hand rose, hesitated, then pressed lightly against his injured shoulder. He didn't flinch. But I don't want the war outside either. Her fingers curled slightly in his shirt. So if I stay, she finished, her pulse racing, we burn the cage down. Together. For a long moment, he simply stared at her. Then, very slowly, he nodded, and for the first time since she'd been brought here, the choice was hers, and that terrified him more than any enemy ever could. The police were everywhere within minutes. Blue lights flooded the compound. Officers moved in tactical lines through the shattered lower level, weapons raised, voices sharp and controlled. Statements were demanded. Questions were fired. Kang Dae-hyun answered them with cold precision. A break-in. Attempted corporate retaliation. Internal security failure. He did not mention Zuri's name. Not once. She stood upstairs in the master wing, watching the chaos from behind untouched glass. The baby shifted inside her, a slow roll beneath her palm. Burn the cage down. She had said it like a challenge. Now she had to mean it. By dawn, the penthouse was silent again. Too silent. The broken library had been sealed, blood cleaned, evidence removed with brutal efficiency. Only the faint scent of gunpowder lingered in the air like a memory that refused to leave. Dae-hyun entered the bedroom without knocking. He had changed into a clean shirt, but the graze on his shoulder was now wrapped in white gauze. His hair was slightly disheveled, rare for him. He looked tired, not weak, just human. You're awake, he said quietly. I didn't sleep. A pause. Neither did I. He didn't say it, but she knew. Zuri turned from the window. You were supposed to be invincible, she said softly. I never claimed that. No, she agreed. You just let everyone assume it. Silence stretched between them. Then he walked to the small table near the fireplace and placed something down. A phone. Not the heavily monitored device she'd been given before. A different one. No tracking inside the wing, he said. No guards past the lower floor. Your brother will be allowed supervised visits. Her heart skipped. And the balcony, she asked carefully. He met her eyes. Unlocked. She studied him. Why? His answer came without hesitation. Because if you're going to stay, it won't be because I cornered you. The word settled deep in her chest. This wasn't softness. This was strategy. But it was also something else. He stepped closer. I underestimated how much you hate being controlled. You don't say. A flicker of something almost amused passed over his face. And I underestimated how much I care whether you hate me. That one landed. Harder than gunfire. Zuri's breath caught. He noticed. Of course he did. He always noticed. You said we burn the cage down, he continued. That means changes. Real ones. But understand this, Zuri. His voice lowered, not threatening, but firm. The war doesn't disappear because we want peace. I know. And the men who came last night, they won't stop. I know. His eyes searched hers. And if they try again... I won't hesitate, she said, cutting him off. But don't mistake me. I'm not fighting for your empire. A beat. I'm fighting for my child. The correction was deliberate. He nodded slowly. As you should. Another long silence. The tension between them was different now. Still electric. Still dangerous. But no longer one-sided. She wasn't prey. She wasn't bargaining. She was negotiating. With a king. Later that evening, Dae-hyun stood in his private office. His most trusted lieutenant waited across from him. Security within the residential wing, the man asked carefully. Removed. A flicker of surprise. Sir, after last night. I'm aware of what happened. And the woman? Dae-hyun's gaze turned glacial. She is not to be referred to as the woman. The lieutenant swallowed. My apologies. Dae-hyun turned back toward the city skyline. Anyone who enters this property without authorization dies, he said calmly. But no internal surveillance on her movements. That's a risk. Yes. A deliberate one. Upstairs. Zuri sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the new phone. Freedom, or the illusion of it. Her thumb hovered over a familiar number. Her rescuer. Her connection to the outside. The war waiting beyond these walls. She hesitated. Then instead of calling him, she dialed someone else. Her brother. When his voice answered, relief flooded her so hard she nearly cried. I'm okay, she whispered. A pause. Are you safe? He demanded. She glanced toward the closed bedroom door. Yes. And for the first time, it wasn't a lie. Hours later, she stepped onto the balcony. Unlocked. Wind rushed against her face. The city glittered below. Behind her, she felt him before she heard him. Dae-hyun didn't crowd her, didn't touch her. He simply stood beside her. The distance between them small, intentional. You could have left tonight, he said quietly. Yes, but you didn't. No. A long pause. Why? She kept her eyes on the skyline. Because I don't run from wars, she said. I end them. Something in him stilled. And you think you can end mine? She finally turned to face him. I think, she said softly, you don't actually want it anymore. That struck deeper than any bullet. His jaw tightened. You don't know what I want. Then tell me. The wind whipped her hair across her face. For a moment, the cold-blooded Mafia boss, the man feared across continents, looked uncertain. I want, he began slowly, to not lose you. There it was. Not possession. Not dominance. Fear. Raw and unguarded. Zuri's heart pounded. Then stop trying to own me, she whispered. The space between them crackled. His hand lifted, paused. Then instead of gripping her wrist, or caging her in, he gently brushed the hair from her face, barely touching her skin. If I let you stand beside me, he said, voice low, you won't like what you see. Try me. A long look. Then, for the first time, he smiled without calculation. And somewhere deep in the city below, another enemy was already planning the next move. Because peace inside the penthouse only meant one thing. The real war was about to begin. The real war did not announce itself with sirens. It arrived quietly. 3 days after the attack, one of Dae-hyun's offshore accounts was frozen. Not seized, frozen. A warning shot wrapped in paperwork. By nightfall, 2 cargo shipments were intercepted at the port. By morning, a board member had resigned. Zuri watched the storm build from the inside. She found him in the strategy room at 2 a.m., sleeves rolled up, city lights reflecting off the wall of monitors. Numbers scrolled in red. Routes blinked out one by one. "You're being cornered," she said. "I'm being tested," he corrected. She crossed her arms. "By who?" He hesitated. That alone told her it was serious. "Someone who doesn't want my territory," he said finally. "They want my collapse." Internal. Partly. A slow realization dawned. "The man who attacked the house," she murmured. "He wasn't just trying to get to me. No, he was bait." Dae-hyun met her eyes. "And you were the hook." The word should have hurt. Instead, they sharpened her. "Then let's stop reacting," she said. "Let's strike." A flicker of approval crossed his face. "You sound very comfortable declaring war." "I'm not declaring it," she replied calmly. "I'm choosing the battlefield." He studied her like she was something entirely new. "Go on." She walked closer to the screens. "They're freezing accounts, intercepting shipments. That means influence at regulatory level." "Yes." "And inside your board." "Yes. So you don't crush them." His brow furrowed. "You expose them." Silence. "Publicly," she continued. "You flip the narrative. You become the target of sabotage instead of the king losing grip. You let the sharks turn on each other." He watched her carefully. "You think they'll fracture?" "They always do," she said. "Men who chase power don't share it." A long pause. "You've been paying attention," he murmured. "I've been surviving you," she corrected. Something almost like pride warmed his expression. "Who taught you to think like this?" "You did," she said quietly. That landed heavier than either of them expected. 2 days later, the press leaked a story. Not about Kang Syndicate. About corruption within the International Trade Oversight Committee. Anonymous documents. Shell companies. Board connections. 3 names surfaced. One of them belonged to Dae-hyun's former financial advisor. The same man who had insisted on expanding into unstable territories last quarter. The same man who had approved the compromised security vendor. By sunset, 2 more board members had stepped down. Not because Dae-hyun forced them, because they were afraid. Inside the penthouse, he poured her a glass of sparkling water and handed it to her without comment. "To the battlefield you chose," he said quietly. She didn't smile. "It's not over." "No." Their fingers brushed when she took the glass. This time, neither of them pulled away. That night, she didn't sleep on the sofa. But she didn't curl into him either. They lay on opposite sides of the bed, a deliberate stretch of space between them. Not cold, not hostile, careful. Halfway through the night, thunder rolled over the mountains. The baby shifted sharply inside her, uncomfortable. She winced. Before she could sit up, his hand was already at her stomach. Instinct. Protective. Not possessive. "Is it pain?" he asked, voice rough with sleep. "No," she whispered. "Just restless." His palm stayed there, warm and steady. Without thinking, she covered his hand with hers. A shared anchor. The storm outside intensified. For once, neither of them moved away. But enemies adapt. 3 nights later, the phone she had used to call her brother buzzed. Unknown number. She stared at it. Dae-hyun was in the shower. The buzzing stopped. Then a message arrived. A photo. Her brother. Leaving work. Taken that evening. Her blood went cold. Another message. "You chose the wrong king." Her fingers trembled. The cage hadn't burned down. It had simply changed shape. The bathroom door opened. Steam drifted into the bedroom. Dae-hyun stepped out, towel around his waist, expression immediately sharpening when he saw her face. "What happened?" She didn't speak. She handed him the phone. He read the message once. His jaw locked. The air in the room shifted. Temperature dropping 10 degrees. "This is my fault," she whispered. "No, it's because I stayed. It's because they're desperate." He was already moving, pulling on clothes, issuing quiet orders through his secure line. Double surveillance on her brother. Rotate personnel every 6 hours. No predictable patterns. He ended the call. Zuri stood there, shaking. "I won't let them touch him," he said. "You can't promise that." "Yes," he replied evenly. "I can." She stepped closer. "Why are you doing this?" she demanded. "Why protect him?" "He hates you." Dae-hyun looked at her like the answer was obvious. Because he's yours. The simplicity of it stole her breath. Not strategy, not leverage, just truth. She took a step closer, then another, until she was standing right in front of him. You keep saying you don't want to lose me, she said softly. Then stop fighting alone. His eyes searched hers. This war will stain you. It already has. A beat. You don't scare me, Dae-hyun. His voice dropped to something almost fragile. You should be. Maybe, she whispered. But I'm not. Slowly, deliberately, she reached for him first, her fingers sliding into his shirt, gripping the fabric. Not out of hunger, not out of surrender, out of choice. He inhaled sharply. That choice undid him more than any defiance ever had. The storm outside raged again. Inside, the king and the woman who refused to be caged stood face to face. Not captor, not captive, partners in a war neither of them could walk away from now. And somewhere in the city, the mastermind behind the freezing accounts and the silent sniper watched the news cycle with irritation. The plan had been simple. Break Dae-hyun by breaking his weakness. But weakness was turning into something far more dangerous. Unity. And unity was harder to kill. The mastermind made his first mistake the following morning. He underestimated how quickly a cornered empire could sharpen its claws. At 6:12 a.m., Dae-hyun's private intelligence unit traced the metadata from the photograph of Zuri's brother. Not to a street camera, not to a freelance spy, to a property lease. A luxury high-rise office registered under a shell company that funneled through 3 countries before landing in one familiar name. Han Ji-soo, former logistics director of Kang Syndicate, the only man Dae-hyun had ever spared. Years ago, when a smuggling route collapsed and cost them millions, Ji-soo had taken the fall publicly. But privately, Dae-hyun had known the truth. It wasn't incompetence. It was greed. Ji-soo had been siphoning information to competitors. Dae-hyun could have ended him. Instead, he exiled him. He should have known better. Zuri stood beside him as the file loaded across the screen. This is personal, she murmured. It always is. What did you take from him? Dae-hyun's expression didn't change. Everything. Her gaze flicked to him. And you let him live? Yes. Why? A quiet pause. Because at the time, I believe mercy made me powerful. And now I know it makes enemies patient. Zuri absorbed that. Then don't repeat the mistake. He looked at her carefully. You're asking me not to show mercy. I'm asking you not to show ego. That landed. For a moment, silence thickened the room. Then Dae-hyun turned to Juno. Prepare the soul channel. Zuri blinked. You're flying. No. A faint, dangerous curve touched his mouth. I'm inviting him. That evening, an encrypted message was delivered to Ji-soo. Dinner. Mountain Estate. 9 p.m. No threats. No theatrics. Just coordinates. Zuri paced the sitting room as staff discreetly removed half the guards from visible posts. You're letting him inside, she demanded. Yes. That's reckless. It's controlled. It's pride. It's bait. She stopped pacing. You're sure? His gaze softened just slightly. You're not the only one who can choose the battlefield. 9:03 p.m. Han Ji-soo arrived in a tailored charcoal coat, calm and composed, as if attending a corporate gala rather than walking into the lion's den. He bowed slightly. Chairman. Ji-soo. Their eyes locked. History hummed between them. Zuri watched from the side of the room, her hand unconsciously resting over her stomach. Dinner was served. 3 courses. Civil conversation. Market shifts. Shipping routes. Politics. Anyone watching would think they were allies. Until Ji-soo set down his wine glass. You should have killed me, he said lightly. Dae-hyun didn't flinch. Yes. Zuri's pulse spiked. But you didn't, Ji-soo continued. And now your empire is bleeding. You overestimate your reach, Dae-hyun replied calmly. Ji-soo smiled faintly. I've frozen your European accounts. Temporarily. I've convinced 2 of your board members to flip. They were weak. I sent a sniper into your sanctuary. A slight glance toward Zuri. And yet, Dae-hyun said evenly, you're here. That smile faltered. For the first time, tension entered Ji-soo's posture. Dae-hyun leaned back. You wanted me unstable, emotional, distracted. His eyes flicked briefly toward Zuri. You miscalculated. Jisu's jaw tightened. I exposed your offshore reserves yesterday, Dae-hyun continued. Anonymous tip to the authorities. Guess whose name surfaced in the audit? Silence. Zuri realized what had happened. While Jisu froze accounts publicly, Dae-hyun had quietly redirected funds, letting Jisu's shell companies absorb the traceable trails. A financial trap. You framed me, Jisu hissed. No, Dae-hyun corrected. You framed yourself. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Not guards. Officials. International Financial Crimes Division. Jisu's composure cracked. You wouldn't dare, he breathed. You threatened my family, Dae-hyun said softly. That word again. Family. The door opened. Badges flashed. Jisu stood slowly. His gaze shifted to Zuri. You think he's protecting you, he said quietly. But men like him don't love. They conquer. Zuri held his stare. Good thing I'm not territory. That answer hit harder than she expected. The officials escorted Jisu out. The door shut. Silence flooded the estate. Zuri exhaled shakily. It's over. For him, Dae-hyun said. She turned to him. You didn't kill him. No. Why? A long pause. Because prison will last longer. Not mercy. Strategy. She nodded slowly. Then her knees buckled. The adrenaline crash hit hard. Before she could fall, he caught her. This time not as possession. As support. He lifted her gently and carried her to the sofa. You shouldn't have stood that long, he muttered. I'm not fragile. You're carrying my world. The words slipped out unfiltered. He froze as soon as he said them. Zuri stared up at him. That's new, she whispered. He didn't pull back. Didn't deflect. Didn't mask it. Yes, he admitted. The empire was stabilizing. The immediate threat was contained. But something far more dangerous had shifted inside the mountain estate. He had chosen her publicly. Not as leverage. Not as weakness. But as priority. Zuri reached up, brushing her fingers against his jaw. You don't have to cage me, she said softly. His hand covered hers. I know. A quiet, vulnerable beat passed between them. But I don't know how not to protect what's mine. She searched his eyes. Then learn. For the first time, the king of Kang Syndicate looked like a man standing at the edge of something unfamiliar. Not war. Not conquest. Change. And change, unlike enemies, could not be defeated. It had to be faced. Together. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on all notifications so you're the first to know when episode 3 drops. Trust me, the next part is going to be even more intense. Leave a comment below.